March 1958. 53-year-old Nathan Leopold has just been released from Stateville Penitentiary, Illinois, after decades in prison. The last time he faced a group of Chicago newsmen, he'd been a mere teenager, though already a confessed killer.
Ladies and gentlemen, a month ago, I begged the members of the parole board for their compassion. Today, I am enjoying the first moments of the supervised freedom which they restored to me. Many of you feel that a third of a century spent in prison has been severe punishment and are happy to see me free.
In 1924, Leopold and his accomplice, Richard Loeb, had killed a 14-year-old boy in cold blood. The academic Simon Bartz has written a book about the murder of Bobby Franks. He says it was an event which shook many Americans.
There was the belief in the 1920s that crimes were hereditary and were linked to poverty. Both Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb came from very wealthy families, and all of this was very shocking to Chicagoans that two rich, well-educated, intelligent boys could commit a crime that seemed very brutal, perverse, inexplicable.
Nathan Leopold was 19 and Richard Loeb 18, the sons of highly respectable Jewish families in Chicago. Nathan's father was vice president of a great American institution, the mail-order giant Sears Roebuck. They were ultra-privileged, highly intelligent and had become gay lovers. They craved excitement and together they dispensed with conventional morality. They'd already conducted a programme of vandalism and theft, at times targeting their friends. But they decided the ultimate thrill would be to kidnap somebody and kill them. They hired a car and drove around the wealthy part of Chicago where they lived. They spotted someone they knew, Bobby Franks, aged 14.
Bobby Franks came into the car. It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon on a bright sunny day, and Loeb in the back seat hit the victim over the head. He wouldn't stop struggling, so Richard Loeb pulled him into the back seat of the car and asphyxiated him by stuffing a rag down his throat.
Then they took Bobby's body to Wolf Lake outside Chicago, poured acid on it and hid it in a culvert. They were certain it was the perfect murder, but in fact Nathan Leopold failed to spot he'd dropped his own glasses. Contacting the Franks family anonymously, they said Bobby was alive and could be returned for a ransom. Yet Simon Bartz believes the money was never really the point.
It was really an intellectual exercise for them. They would do the crime, it would be a sensational crime. They had also a sense of, I think we would call it now, a sense of entitlement, in the sense that they didn't imagine that they would be caught.
Yet arrogance had made the teenagers careless. The body was spotted within hours, and the lost spectacles had an unusual hinge and could be traced to Leopold. Possibly Leopold and Loeb saw themselves as untouchable and above the law, but after years of studying the case, Simon Bartz says their exact motivation is still a mystery.
It's almost impossible to understand why they did this crime and why they killed this young boy. Even Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb, when they were interrogated afterwards by the state's attorney Robert Crowe and by the psychiatrists, found it difficult to come up with a really good reason. There was an escalation of crime. They had committed several crimes beforehand. They were involved in this very intimate, close relationship, a sexual relationship, and in that sense the two of them worked on each other, one egging the other on. But I think when it comes down to it, there's no real explanation as to why suddenly out of the blue two bright, educated teenagers should commit a crime that was so perverse and so shocking.
Following the clues offered by the dropped glasses, the Chicago police picked up Nathan and Richard, who confessed. Many assumed they would hang, but their families were intent they would not.
The real cause of crime is poverty, ignorance, hard luck, and generally youth. These almost invariably combine to produce crime.
Clarence Darrow was one of the best-known lawyers in America. Today he's famous for the Scopes trial in Tennessee the following year, in which he argued that schools were free to teach the theory of evolution. But in 1924 he was a successful criminal lawyer resolutely opposed to capital punishment.
Darrow was brought in by the families. Both Richard and Nathan had pleaded guilty. They had refused to say sorry and express remorse. And they chose Clarence Darrow as the lawyer because he had faced equally difficult circumstances before and had been successful in getting the defendants a life sentence instead of the death penalty.
Because Leopold and Loeb had already confessed, there was no jury. The trial was really more of a hearing before Judge John Cavely to establish motive and decide on the sentence. Darrow decided to portray his clients as possessing disordered personalities. At one crucial point, a psychiatrist explained what Nathan Leopold had said to him earlier about the roots of his philosophy.
He argued with me that for many years he's cultivated and adhered to a purely hedonistic philosophy, that all action is justified if it gives pleasure. That was his ambition and has been for many years, to become a perfect Nietzschean and to follow Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy all the way through.
So, it seemed, Leopold and Loeb had taken their cue from Friedrich Nietzsche, the 19th century German philosopher who proclaimed God was dead and who espoused the merits of the Übermensch or Superman. It all helped Darrow portray his clients as unbalanced, even deranged, and therefore not responsible for their actions. In later stage and screen dramatisations, it's Darrow's passionate oratory which means Leopold and Loeb escape the death sentence. Simon Bartz says that may make good drama, but it's not really true.
The judge, John Cavely, gave a long speech at the end, and at the end said, I'm going to sentence these two boys to life in prison, and the reason is simply because of the youth. They were very young. One was 18 and one was 19, and therefore Darrow's defence played little role in the judge's decision.
Furious arguments ensued between those in favour of capital punishment and those opposed to it. 5 years later, the case inspired the hit play Rope, later filmed in Hollywood by Alfred Hitchcock. Other stage, film and TV versions followed, possibly the most unlikely being the off-Broadway musical Thrill Me.
Thrill me. Thrill yourself. Don't forget what you promised on paper, what you do when we finished a caper. Every time I demand what's required.
Thrill Me is now playing in London. I asked the composer, Stephen Dolginoff, if writing it gave him an insight into why Leopold and Loeb killed Bobby Franks.
I think I understand why they feel they committed the murder, and I think it really was because they were bored. I think they got caught up in something without maybe really believing that it would really happen. Perhaps Leopold didn't think Loeb was really going to do it, and Loeb felt, well, if I back out now, what will Leopold think of me? I'll go down in his esteem. I think it's something that spiraled out of control.
As for the real-life murderers, Richard Loeb died in prison in 1936, stabbed to death by another inmate. After his parole in 1958, Nathan Leopold moved to Puerto Rico, where 3 years later he married. He died in 1971 of natural causes.